right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. Hell of a show, fascinating day in America. So we've got 2 hours of action-packed news. And then in the third hour, what's gonna happen is I'm going to interview Hassan Piker about some of the comments that he made yesterday on his own Twitch channel. All right, that's gonna be an interesting conversation. And then I'm gonna talk to Matthew Sheffield in the second half of the conversation. And he is one of the founders of Newsbusters, which was one of the top conservative websites in the country, and went after media for being too liberal. He is now a progressive. His transition story is amazing. Okay, wait till you hear that.
What? Did he get blue pilled?
Well, wait till the third hour of the Young Turks, where there will be many very fascinating conversations.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
And then in the second hour, Richard Eskow, old friend Richard Eskow, is going to join us as part of the panel. He is a former speechwriter for Bernie Sanders, and he's also going to join me in the post game. That's the last half hour of the Young Turks that only the members get. tyt.com/join to become a member, and I'll talk to Richard about his personal life a little bit, including how it was to write speeches for Bernie Sanders and whether he ever listened to them. So action-packed show. Let's get started.
All right. Cenk was on Chris Cuomo's primetime CNN show last night debating Kayleigh McEnany, that is the Trump supporting woman who he's debated on the show before. And there were actually a few topics represented in this segment. The first one had to do with the economy. And I actually really liked your answer here, Cenk. I thought this was strong, yet calm.
Interesting, yeah. A rare compliment, thank you.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Well, it's a debate within the administration whether now is the time to give yet another tax cut. This is a key part of the president's strategy. He's having this debate and he's having it publicly in front of and with the American people. But tax cuts work. This is the hottest economy on record. No arguing with the Trump economy. It's why we're going to win in 2020.
He says the economy is fantastic and we need to cut interest rates. That actually makes no sense at all. If the economy was booming, you'd be worried about inflation. And you wouldn't be cutting interest rates, you'd actually be increasing the interest rates. The reality is that the economy is not booming. Every economist in the country is worried about a recession. And in fact, the Trump administration is deeply worried about a recession. They just told donors that there was a moderate risk of recession. And the only reason they're considering a payroll tax cut, which would actually go to the employees, is because they know the only thing that actually stimulates the economy is not supply side economics, but actually getting finally the American workers some sort of relief. But and the reason they're considering that now, and Trump is obviously lying about that he wasn't, it's not connected to the recession, is because they're really worried we're about to hit a recession.
Well, look, I mean, there is a little bit.
Kayleigh, when we do hit the recession, will you come back on here and admit the supply side economics and tax cuts for the rich didn't work?
It's really quite disgusting that you're rooting on a recession.
No, first of all, you did a great job, but we got to talk about the way that she handled that, because you guys had her cornered the entire time, right? And she was very defensive, and this is what the right wing does when they're cornered. They automatically accuse you of doing something to intimidate you or to shut you up or to stop a very real point that many Americans are feeling right now. Just before we went on air, a story broke from Time that talked about the boom in the service jobs that are available. And what's the quality of those jobs? Little benefits, very low pay. I mean, the average American is struggling right now. And if you have the audacity to tell the truth about what's happening with this economy and what happened with those Trump tax cuts, like what these corporations and the wealthy actually did with those tax cuts, oh, you're rooting for a recession. You didn't root for a recession. You're just telling the truth about all the different things that the Trump administration has done, which will lead to a recession.
So I was amused by that answer of hers as usual. So interesting, sophisticated economic point. I will counter with something made up.
Totally.
I never said I was hoping that a recession would come. I said I was worried that a recession would come. And in fact, if you watch the Young Turks, I've said that many times. I think it's a bad idea when people like Bill Maher say that they're rooting for a recession. Even, in fact, yesterday on the program, before I went on CNN, I said, be careful what you wish for. Recessions can turn disastrous and affect millions and millions of people. It reminded me of the people rooting for Trump to win because then things might get better after they get worse. Be careful on things getting worse. Unfortunately, whether we want it or not, that recession appears to be headed in our direction. And look, a lot of, as I said there, the majority of economists certainly agree and are concerned about that. But the economic theory that has been put on cable news over and over again and never really quite rebutted, certainly not at the quantity that the right wing puts out their message, is that the supply side economics don't work. The only way to stimulate the economy is actually to get money to average Americans so they spend it because they're not rich, they don't save it, they immediately put it back into the economy that circulates it within the economy and creates a healthier one. And that's why very high marginal tax rates worked for us in the 1950s and 60s. We want to hear great case of that every podcast. Check out Pitchfork Economics on our podcasting network by Nick Hanauer. A brilliant businessman, capitalist, and warning now, my God, you've got to watch out. If you don't have a better distribution of income, our whole economy is going to crash, and it's not going to be good for anyone, including the rich. And if you, by the way, if you want to watch the whole CNN appearance, we put it up on tyt.com. You can see it there. And then finally, look, I don't want, so the things that she said wrong, Chris and I agreed that she was wrong because she had the facts. She misstated the facts. She misstated what I said. But Chris doesn't agree with me very often, including the first comment, which is like it's his right not to agree. And that's why he's in the middle. But it's the thing that I brought up in the beginning is grading. It's what we talked about yesterday as well. Which is I mentioned, look, the president's a lunatic, and the whole talk of buying Greenland and being upset, et cetera, and talking about how he's the second coming of God. And Chris dismissed it out of hand, like, oh, we're not going to do the 25th Amendment. Let's get real and talk about real policies. Yeah. So that's okay. And that's Chris's position. But he's got his own opinions. But the only times that we say that Kayleigh's wrong together is when she states the facts wrong.
Right, of course. I mean, and that's what I mean when I say that you had her, both of you had her cornered when it came to the portions of the segment that I saw. Now, one of those portions actually happened to be on gun control as well, so let's discuss that a little bit. So the topic of Donald Trump flip-flopping on possible gun control legislation came up during this interview. And of course, McEnany is gonna defend Trump and pretend as though he never flip-flopped, but you really held her feet to the fire, so let's take a look.
Background checks. Is there an appetite, or is the Atlantic reporting right that the president told the NRA, don't worry about it, it's not gonna happen?
Well, I don't believe Atlantic reporting or so-called sources, but this president is the one who fixed the criminal background check system with the Fix NICS Act. He wants solutions, but he wants solutions that work.
What is the position, Kayleigh?
He said he wants meaningful background checks. We are talking with Congress, but you are doing a disservice to everyone in this country by not focusing on the real problem here, which is mental illness.
Mental illness is not the root of our gun violence, and you know it.
We could have kept a gun out of the hand of the Parkland
He's
shooter
not going to do it, right?
if we seized a weapon from a mentally ill individual. Red flag laws work.
He said he would do federal background checks. He's not going to do it, right, Kayleigh?
He said
he's not going to do it. 97% of Americans want federal background checks.
Could have.
And we cannot get it in a so-called democracy because of corruption. Donald Trump got $30 million from the NRA, and he serves the NRA, and he was stupid enough to admit it. He came out and he said, they were very strong backers of mine. They were very strong backers.
Let's leave it here.
They gave me money, and I did what I wanted, what they wanted. That's called a swamp. It's corrupt.
Let's leave it here.
Allow all these mass shootings to happen over and over again.
That's ridiculous.
Cenk,
So, okay, we'll get to the substance in a second, but you did the Trump impression, which I don't think I've ever seen on cable news. I mean, I don't watch it 24/7. I'm sure it's happened at some point, but we were all kind of gathered around a TV in the studio watching you.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Not all, like a few of us, I guess.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, when you started doing the impression, like we all erupted. Like it was funny.
It's really funny because I got a bunch of comments, obviously on Twitter, which always happens. But and some people were like, "Oh, that's cool that you did," and other people were like, "Hey, that's unbecoming on cable news."
Come on.
Okay, hold on. The funny thing is, I didn't even notice I was doing it. Like people think like, "Oh, I planned it out and stuff." I just do it naturally. Like I do it at home. Whenever. now whenever anybody says anything stupid, I do it in the Trump voice. I'm like, oh, it's a very strong dinner you made. Well, that would be me saying something stupid about my wife. Okay, so I even do it to myself. So it wasn't like planned or anything. I just naturally did it because that's Trump and he's an idiot.
It was funny. It's for anyone who says it's unbecoming. I mean, we're talking about Trump. Trump is unbecoming. Everything about him, like head to toe, is unbecoming. But let's talk a little bit about the point she brought up. And I think you made a great point, but at the same time, I wish every single time a right winger brings up mental illness, they're immediately met with, all right, well, mass shootings have been happening for years now, so where's the fighting for mental illness? Do you guys only care about mental illness after a mass shooting happens so you guys can deflect and use mental illness as the scapegoat?
Yeah.
But the point that you did make was good, so I thought it was strong, and I love that you had an opportunity to talk about corruption.
Yeah, so that apparently was somewhat controversial because that also got some play afterwards. I love what you're saying, and I wish I'd said that too, because they've never introduced a bill to increase mental illness funding, so they're totally full of it on that. But again, I said corruption as a matter of course because it's obviously the reality of why he does what he does and why a lot of the politicians do it. But afterwards, people are like, "Whoa, calling Trump corrupt." I'm like,
really?
Like what? Whoa. Isn't it super obvious? And I guess it's not super obvious to a lot of people because people don't often say it. Yeah, if you take $30 million from somebody and then they tell you what to do and then you do it and you admit publicly, he came out of the meeting with Wayne LaPierre and Trump said, well, they were very strong backers of mine.
Right.
And so I changed my position and now I'm against background checks. It doesn't get any more clear than that. That is a stunning admission of corruption. They gave me money, I changed my position. That's called bribery. It's legalized in this country, but it's still bribery.
I mean, all you really did was articulate what's evident if you connect the dots. Not only did Trump say the quiet part out loud, in saying that they're backers of his, but Wayne LaPierre's tweet about his meeting with Trump was pinned on the NRA Twitter account because it's a sign of, or it's messaging indicating, no, we own him. He's gonna say that he wants gun control after these mass shootings happen. And then we're gonna have a meeting with him and remind him, no, you are our puppet because we're funding you. And then he's gonna go ahead and change course, and that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
All right, well, speaking of gun control, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about what else is going on in the news.
Suspect Montoya had clear plans, intent, and the means to carry out an act of violence that may have resulted in a mass casualty incident.
As many as 29 people have been arrested in 18 states for threatening to commit mass shootings or carry out mass shootings. And this is just since the 2 mass shootings that took place in El Paso, Texas and Dayton, Ohio. Now, one of the mass shooting plots that have been foiled by authorities was in Long Beach, California, just recently. In fact, CBS Morning News has more details on that. Let's take a look.
Long Beach police arrested disgruntled hotel cook Rodolfo Montoya at his home in Huntington Beach. They seized multiple high-powered firearms, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and tactical gear, including an assault rifle and high-capacity magazines, which are illegal in California. Irma Escobedo worked with Montoya at the Marriott Hotel. She says he sometimes made her uncomfortable, but she never reported him.
He looked for me and he touched me or gave me a kiss on the hand. I said, don't touch me, please, don't kiss me because the cameras are there and I don't like that.
One of the suspect's neighbors who did not want to be shown says another neighbor warned him to stay away from Montoya.
One next door told me that he had guns in that RV and just stay clear of it. He's got all kinds of guns.
Now at least 29 people have been arrested in 18 states for threatening mass violence since mass shootings this month in Texas and Ohio.
Yeah, so look guys, this is a case of law enforcement doing a great job. And so this happened, apparently he was a disgruntled employee. That there's different causes. It's really, and I don't mean to be coy with using this word, but there's different triggers for what sets people off. And sometimes it's race, sometimes it's religion, sometimes it's employee issues, sometimes a girlfriend, boyfriend, etc. But whatever it is, the fact that law enforcement is heading it off all across the country, you have to give them tremendous credit. So we stick with the facts here. So when law enforcement does something wrong, we point it out. When they do something great, we point it out. But the most important thing is, if you have someone that you know in your personal life that's talking about how they have a lot of guns, or they're gonna shoot people, and they're angry and they're gonna take it out on people, report them. It's not a joke, and this is not the old days. It's not McCarthyism. It's not any of that. Assume that they have, even if they didn't say anything about guns, assume they have weapons because it's America. It's very likely that they do. And if it turns out it's a false alarm, okay, it's a little inconvenience, and whatever you do not do it out of maliciousness, right? Because if you cry wolf, that is terribly counterproductive. But if someone is actually talking about that at work, at school, wherever it might be, given what has happened in this country, it's super important that you tell the authorities, because unfortunately, in this country, it's a high percentage chance that they are not kidding, they're not bluffing, and if they hadn't turned that guy in, when does he use all those weapons? It looks like it would have been imminent.
Right, I mean, the cops are saying that there was a game plan set in place, that he was actually planning on carrying out this act of violence. And I just wanna make a few comments about this particular foiled plot. He had all of those assault weapons, and very briefly they mentioned in that report that, well, these assault weapons are illegal in California, and inevitably you're gonna get a wave of conservatives and gun rights activists saying, well, you see, these laws don't work, it's banned in California, and so, see, got his hands on those assault weapons. But we're not an island, right? Surrounded by water, big water. We're a country, right, of states, and all you need to do is drive to a state that has lax gun laws and just buy any gun you want willy-nilly.
Yeah, if people don't know all the ridiculous Trump quotes, sometimes they probably get confused. They're like, why does Anna want to make a point about how America's not an island surrounded by big water?
That's wet from the standpoint of water.
That's right, another great Trumpism.
Yeah.
So, guys, everybody's armed. And look, one more thing about that. I've told a story, many stories about this. Usually in the last half hour of the Young Turks, which is just for members, tyt.com/join to hear some of these stories. I told a story about how I fought with this guy named Buford. Brett and I cracked up over it, but it was the old days. It was the 80s. It was Jersey, and people fought, and it was a little bit more of an innocent time. Now, don't fight anybody, man. You have to assume at all times that everyone has a gun, because in America, and if you're a tourist and you don't know that, be careful in America. It's a dangerous country, I'm not kidding. Not only are there mass shootings, whenever there's any kind of conflict, you have to assume that the person is armed. There's over 250 million guns in America. So it is a very dangerous place. The Wild Wild West was nothing compared to today. The shootout at the OK Corral, legendary. So I mean, in Las Vegas, we had a massacre of 52 people, a huge massacre in Orlando, etc. I mean, you've seen it all over Florida. You see it in the news all the time, right? So the OK Corral, I mean, must have been over 50, right? 70 people killed, 90 people killed? No, 2 people, that's it. And back then, that was like, whoa, 2 people died in a shootout at the OK Corral.
There were like 12 people in America at that time.
Yeah, but like that's seen as like the bad old days. No, the bad old days are right now. Everybody's weaponized, and some certain percentage are mentally ill with a violent streak. Not all the mentally ill, in fact, it's a tiny, tiny minority of the mentally ill that have a violent streak. But unfortunately, a country of 300 million people and about 300 million guns, that tiny percentage does a lot of damage, no matter what political or religious or personal beef that they think they have.
Right, and you also have politically fueled violence, for, I'm not gonna say for the first time, but it's definitely exacerbated due to the type of rhetoric that we're hearing in right-wing media outlets, from Donald Trump himself, fear-mongering about migrants and people of color. And there's, again, 29 separate people who have been arrested in 18 states because they were threatening to carry out mass shootings. And I just want to read you a few examples. On August 8th, a man is accused of walking into a Walmart in Missouri equipped with body armor, a handgun, and a rifle less than a week after a gunman killed 22 people in a Texas Walmart, and says it's a social experiment and not intended to cause panic. The 20-year-old was charged with making a terrorist threat. So why are you walking into any place with that type of weaponry?
Yeah, a lot of people are like, oh, it's my rights, it's my rights. you might yes, but then there are cops who might be concerned that they're gonna get shot, then you're in a world of trouble, right? Let alone anybody else getting shot. And why are you going around terrorizing people with weapons? And you don't even know exactly what your rights are in that particular state, etc. And obviously you violated the law. But it goes on and on. I mean, the guys to worry about the most are the ones that are unhinged and ready to act. And one more time, whether it's the FBI or local law enforcement, when they catch them before they do the shootings, oftentimes you don't see it. That's part of why we're doing this story. You have to give them credit for the things that they stopped that you didn't see. That's when law enforcement is at its best.
Absolutely. We got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we are going to discuss some activists who are holding Nancy Pelosi accountable for her unwillingness to impeach Donald Trump. Come right back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Leroy Beresford writes in the member section, it's clear that Kayleigh McEnany isn't taking advantage of TYT membership privileges. She would have definitely seen that Cenk is no fan of a recession or of Bill Maher. Hey, Kayleigh, tyt.com/trial, you'll learn a lot for free. That's true. You use tyt.com/trial, you get the first week free. Nicholas Ward says Cenk crushed every bullet point. Her only comeback was ad hominem, stone cold. Well, thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate that. Tridora says Anna Kasparian is on point. Conservatives go to that snowflake defense because they can't really defend their true points/intentions. Speaking of Anna, Hammerdan says, does Anna's top look like it's halfway to a superhero?
Oh, I don't know, but it's not a top, it's a dress.
Oh, interesting.
I bought this for Politicon last year because I feel like it's fierce and I want it to be fierce.
Apparently it was fierce enough that he thought maybe you were a superhero. And last one, Pork Chop Express says, they want to keep weapons away from the mentally ill, but they'd let someone mentally ill become president, which is more dangerous.
Yeah.
Nice job, Pork Chop.
By the way, this is faux leather, just so you guys know.
Oh, okay.
No, I know we have progressives watching. I don't want people to think I'm wearing like real leather and whatever. Okay, let's move on. Oh no, actually I have some announcements really quick. First off, Happy Half Hour is gonna be taped today, which means you can look forward to watching it. It's the show hosted by our very own Brett Ehrlich. It is the, in my opinion, best show to watch because it's a nice break from what you'll get on this show, which is the vegetables, but sometimes you want some dessert, okay? And that show is dessert, it's a lot of fun. Steve Bermucci is gonna be on today, so please check it out. 7 p.m. Pacific for TYT members, and it's on YouTube, Roku, Zumo, Pluto, all of those different outlets, so please check it out.
All of our shows are on Pluto, Zumo, and Roku. Definitely check it out if you have any of those devices. We have a 24-hour channel on them, including YouTube TV as well. And it's good to see Stefano Alfonso Bramucci on Happy Half Hour. All right.
And then we also have something happening for our power panel on August 30th, okay? So August 30th, we're gonna have our usual power panel, but we will only air this for our members and also on Pluto TV, Zumo, the Roku channel, and YouTube TV.
So it is not going to be on YouTube and Facebook as usual. On August 30th, it's only on Roku, Zumo, Pluto, YouTube TV, and for members on tyt.com. So check it out on those channels. If you're watching our 24-hour channel on that, fantastic. Put it on in local bars, pizza shops, media organizations, spread the word. Just like CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, 24-hour channel on all of those platforms.
So with that said, let's move on to the rest of the news.
If Speaker Pelosi does not lead on impeachment, she won't leave a legacy of resistance like many other San Francisco Democrats. She will leave a legacy of failure.
I love it. These are activists who attended one of the events in honor of Nancy Pelosi to call her out and demand that she open an impeachment inquiry into Donald Trump. This took place during the San Francisco Democratic Party's event to give Pelosi a Lifetime Achievement Award. And so the activists that you're about to see didn't just stick around outside. They went to the event, they were quiet, they were doing their thing, and then as soon as Nancy Pelosi went up and started speaking, this is what happened. So they were escorted out by police. From what I've read in various reports, no one was arrested, luckily. But I love the fact that they're showing up, they're active, and they're demanding change. And the young woman that you saw in the first video actually had such compelling statements that we're gonna go to in just a second. But I love this because it shows Nancy Pelosi, hey, the second you walk out of your Washington bubble and you talk to real voters, this is what they want. They want action, they want change, they want you to hold Donald Trump accountable.
So I love it too, and I want to explain why I thought this protest was among the best that were executed. Because number one, voters don't have a choice anymore because both Republican and Democratic leadership don't listen to voters at all. They don't want to meet with voters. They have enormous disdain for voters. So if you got to check for Nancy Pelosi, she'll meet with you right away. Same with Schumer, of course, McConnell. McConnell wouldn't know an average American if his life depended on it. And so they are then inviting protests. We have no choice because they've shut out our voice completely. Now, when you go to do the protest, obviously we always practice nonviolence. And in fact, when we do rallies, we teach de-escalation and nonviolence. So obviously nothing physical, we're the left wing, check. And be loud, there's nothing wrong with being loud. But then when the security comes, walk out, it's okay. You've made your point, we're not trying to shut out their voice. We're trying to give us a voice for the first time because we're so underrepresented in Washington and in their bubble, you have no idea, it's actually worse than you think. Inside of Washington, Pelosi has everyone and a phalanx of sycophants going around going, oh, you're so great, Speaker Pelosi. You're the best, Speaker Pelosi. Everything you've ever done is so genius, Speaker Pelosi. Oh my God, everybody loves you, Speaker Pelosi. So it's like the first time she ever hears from any real Americans when you do this. Of course you let her speak, but there's nothing wrong with being loud in the beginning. But when, like I said, under any circumstance, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, when security comes, it's okay, you've made your point, now take it outside and then go and give speeches outside. Wonderful, perfect.
Yeah, and you're right, look, we live in completely different worlds because while we're on the left, right? I mean, we're definitely further on the left, but there are members of the Democratic Party, members of the establishment who look at Pelosi and they think, yeah, Lifetime Achievement Award. So I was curious, like what is it that the San Francisco Democratic Party is citing in giving her this award, especially at a time when Trump is allowed to run roughshod and do whatever he wants without any real ramifications? Well, the San Francisco Democratic Party said Pelosi's contributions to repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell and urging for net neutrality protections in California demonstrates her commitment to fighting for the people. Look, that's weak sauce in my opinion, right?
Super weak sauce.
Not even close to what we need in terms of leadership. We need someone who's willing to fight back against Donald Trump. And there were Pelosi supporters in the crowd as well, and so they started chanting to kind of drown out the sound of the protesters. But I don't want to drown out the sound of the protesters on this show. Their words are so important, their stories are important. So I want to go back to the young woman that we featured at the very top of this story, and I want you to hear what her arguments are for impeachment. Take a look.
Today, I stand here grounded in my immigrant experience as a US citizen with the right to vote, a big mouth, and a big megaphone. I am the Trump administration's worst nightmare. Yeah! Speaker Pelosi is right inside, about to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award, but her legacy is at a crossroads. While Donald Trump empowers white supremacists who are gunning down our communities, locks up migrant children and families in concentration camps, strips away health care protections for transgender people, and cuts millions of women off from accessing health care from Planned Parenthood. Speaker Pelosi keeps telling us to wait on impeachment. She tells us to wait for the Mueller report, wait for the unredacted Mueller report, wait until impeachment polls better, wait for 2020. I'm here to say that my family, my community, our families, our communities cannot afford to wait any longer.
Yeah, you know, wonderful. They're actually I'm more critical of Pelosi than even those protesters are, because at one point she gave her credit for passing the Affordable Care Act and said this, she's done some good things. And I think that's the most overhyped thing that Pelosi's ever done. She kept her caucus together. They had a massive majority, and they passed a very weak version, much better than the plan, the current system they had then. I'm not against it that they passed it, but it's like, wow, you got a plan that was originally a Heritage Foundation plan passed through a massive Democratic majority with the Senate and the president on your side. Anyway, I can go on and on. Look, I get why they give her Lifetime Achievement Awards. She's historic in at least the fact that she was the first female Speaker of the House ever, and now she's a 2-time Speaker of the House. So I'm mixed on that, but at the end of the day, she's wrong on impeachment, and her career, in my opinion, has been defined by a lack of willingness to fight against Republicans.
So I want to just quickly give you a statement from Pelosi in response to the protests. Diversity is the party's strength, but unity is its power, which Pelosi talking about unity after the way she went after freshman congresswomen, the squad. She has no leg to stand on. I mean, she has effectively exacerbated any and all divide that exists between establishment Democrats and progressives. So it's just a weak argument.
It's actually worse than that, because she got so frustrated that of the, what she would consider the insolence of these young freshman congresswomen who would not behave as they were told to do, right? That she blurted out about how they were in favor of Green Dream or whatever. It's just only 4 people. And of course she spit on Medicare for all, etc. But what happens behind the scenes is way worse. She puts Richard Neal in charge of the most powerful committee in the House that controls the budget. And Richard Neal says, I don't want Trump's tax returns from New York. Doesn't fight Trump at all on purpose, because Pelosi told him, under no circumstances are you to fight against Trump. And then she turns around and then puts Sherry Bustos as the head of the DCCC, whose job is to elect more Democrats in the House. But that is not, Pelosi tells her, don't do that. Make sure you elect more corporate Democrats. There's several progressives that were within inches of beating Republicans last time around. Bustos and Pelosi are now actively working against them and trying to find new people to run against them in primaries, even though all they had to do was support them a little bit, and right now they'd be in Congress. But Pelosi doesn't want those Democrats in Congress because she hates progressives. And I mean, and she accidentally let us know because she got frustrated and said, they're 4 people or whatever. These progressives, they don't really count. And that's who Pelosi is. She's a corporate Democrat through and through.
So there was a Monmouth University poll just today, it was released today, and the topic was impeachment. Do the majority of Americans support impeachment? Now, keep in mind that the numbers I'm about to give you include both Democrats and Republicans and independents, to be fair. And according to this poll released Thursday, 35% of Americans support impeaching Trump and removing him from office, while 59% of Americans oppose that course of action. Only 41% of Americans want the House Judiciary Committee to open an impeachment inquiry against the president. Now let's go to graphic 8. If you poll Democrats, remember Pelosi is the leader of the Democratic Party, the House, but she's a leader, a Democratic leader. Although 72% of Democrats believe Trump should be impeached, 72%. Only 39% of independents and 8% of Republicans support impeachment. So I wanted to give you those numbers so you know where the Democratic Party stands when it comes to this question of impeachment.
So 2 things about that. One, let's be clear, it's a fact, she's opposed to 72% of Democrats in the country, and is supposed to be our leader. Second of all, if you don't fight, you never win. right now 35% of Americans. You say, well, that's less than a majority. Well, you don't start impeachment proceedings at more than a majority. If you did, it'd be super easy. And that's not how it works. Historically, how does it work? You know, when they started impeachment proceedings against Richard Nixon, what that was polling at? 19%. Only 19% of Americans wanted to start impeachment proceedings against Nixon. Half a year later, after they actually heard the case, it was in the high 50s when Nixon resigned. Because if you want to convince Americans of your case, you actually have to make it. That is the #1 problem with Speaker Pelosi throughout her entire career. She told the Democratic Party, lie down, surrender, never make your case. And at the culmination of her career, when she's supposed to be resisting Trump, she's doing the same exact thing, doing the exact opposite, not resisting Trump at all and saying, do not make your case, let's just preemptively surrender. At the end of the day, she might be historic, but if you're being honest about her track record, she'll be defined by surrender.
When we come back from the break, we will do a deep dive into Bernie's Green New Deal proposal. Remember, the Green New Deal was an ambitious plan, but it wasn't an actual piece of legislation. Well, Bernie Sanders has the proposal for the legislation, and it is the most progressive. It is awesome. You don't want to miss it.